Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Wow, this is something that I'm very excited about. This particular session, all of the other sessions were really good, but I would say this is probably the best because this is my hero and my shero. And so we're here, Jonathan Quarles, making dollars while making change, and I have my mother and my father, Bill and Ruthy Quarles, with us today, where it all began, Flint, Michigan. And so we're going to get right into it. But what I can promise you today is that we're going to have a very open and honest and frank conversation. One of those ones that a lot of times we just don't have with our families. And one of the things I can appreciate so much about my mother and my father is that I've always been able to have these kind of conversations since I was a kid. And now as an adult and having my own children, there's a lot of things that I'm still learning about my parents, and I'm always learning and at least hoping to gain more knowledge. But as you talk about making dollars while making change, until you have that foundation in place, and this is my foundation. My foundation was my mother and my father. I was fortunate growing up in Flint, Michigan, to have both a mother and a father in the home who actually loved each other, who actually loved us, and who actually, in the midst of all of my curiosity, which people call me a rebel, I still had a mother and a father that loved me no matter what, and instilled certain values. We're going to talk about that today. Wow, this is one of those ones where I'm trying to keep it together because I really do love my parents a lot, and they have no idea. I feel like the rest of my life I owe to them because of what they sacrificed and what they've done for me, what they've done for my brothers. But we're going to get into it. So I hope y'all ready. I hope mom and dad, I hope y'all ready. Are y'all ready?
Yes.
Ready.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. And thank you for allowing me to be able to write about you all. The chapter Flint made, I talked very explicitly about you, Dad, about you, Mom, and about Granny, Lizzie Mae Wilbon, who's is in heaven right now. And so I wanted to, similar to how we started with my boys, my brotherhood, on Monday. We started off with a toast. My parents don't drink, so we had to start off with a prayer, and we had to start off with some wonderful gospel music. And so it's just befitting to have my parents here. And we want to set the stage for what we're about to take place here. But we're going to get right into it. So I guess my first question is actually for both of you all. And the first question that I have for you all is that, what would you say was the most important value or values and principles that you've instilled into me and my brothers, and why was that so important to you? Each one of you, ladies, go first. Mom.
Yes, first of all, I'd have to say that you have to have God in your heart and your life, knowing that He is the one that made you, and He is the one that will save you from all evil and unrighteousness. So I believe I would say more so God being or having God in your life.
Dad.
I ditto that as well. First and most of all, God would be the first thing that we try to instill within you and Jeremiah, to have God first in your life and to focus on Him as you go through life. We also try to instill within you being the principle of having humility, being humble as you go through life, teaching you loyalty, being loyal to whatever you do, and also to be able to have the honesty to do what you're doing with honor. So that can all be done when you have God first in your life, and He will direct and guide you in which areas to go in.
All right, cool. So, Mom, one of the questions that I've always asked you, but I want to, I'm curious to kind of know what your perspective is. That you were raised in a house of all men, and we actually fought for your queenship. We all competed who can actually spoil Mom the most. So on one instance, it probably was something that was probably a cool thing, but then on the other instance, you might have wanted. I didn't know if you want a daughter. But like, how was it growing? How was it coming up in a house full of men that were leaders, that the world called alpha men? And we talked about that before, but men that were very much so motivated by doing good, and also were very protective, and was about our business. So how was it as a mother? How do you manage that? And if you can tell me one of your fondest memories of growing up in a house full of men.
You know what? It was fun, because of the fact that, first of all, I'd have to say that I had the respect of a woman, as well as a wife and a mother. And that definitely came from this gentleman right here, because he made sure that he set that example for you guys. You better not act like you want to wind up rearing up at your mother, he'd say, because I'd wind up taking you out and won't nobody.
I'm familiar with that. I tried that. I tried that a couple of times.
And so, I always felt as though my sons, as well as my husband, really put me on that pedestal. And I was so grateful for that, because I know that it didn't have to be, but it was. And I thank God for it every day of my life.
Okay. And so, knowing what we know now, because the world is a lot different than was. I remember growing up in Flint, Michigan, when we were really, really young on Mount Elliott, Civic Park Hood. For those that are from Flint, know, like, we from Flint. We ain't from the suburb. We from Flint, like Civic Park Hood. So you can't ever question my real Flintness. But growing up in Flint, and actually being and seeing the environment that we're living in now, and you looking back in retrospect, so now your grandparents have 3 beautiful daughters, well, actually 4. You have 4 grandkids. And so is there something that you would do differently if you would have to raise kids today than you would have done, in the 80s and 90s when we were coming up in Flint?
No, still and yet, I would wind up putting the fear of God in them. first and foremost. And then you know what? I see so many things that parents allow children to basically tell them what to do, want to hit at them. Now, see, I'm old school, so I don't play that. I told them, I say I love you, but I don't play. And my grandkids, or my children at church, they all know that. They know Sister Quarles love them, Granny love them, definitely. So I would, of course, I know that there is some difference in how children now are being raised. So, I try to, I think I've basically kind of, uh, I talk a little bit more instead of having the spank spank. But um, I think we've got to make sure that we let children know that they're loved, first of all, but then God loves them more. And I think that's where we are failing the family aspect of things with the children involved because, children are just carefree. They don't have anything to even think about, even look at, other than just the individuals that's around them. And I think that that's what we're losing more and more each generation, I believe, each generation. Yeah.
So Dad, let me ask you a question. And I'm going to talk about this kind of the dynamics, and I feel like how the dynamics has reversed as I was a kid and where I am right now. But I talk a lot about in the book about a lot of the principles and values that I learned from both of you all. On one aspect, Dad, you were the person who was the disciplinary. I mean, both of you all actually disciplined us. But Dad, you were about getting an education. You were about building and developing men, not boys. You still down. And so I guess, I would ask you, Dad, like, were there some things when you think about when I was a kid and when I was a teenager, were there things that actually, when you look back and you see is there any memories that caused you to have any kind of challenges in raising Black boys in the midst of still working and you being a person who you didn't meet your father until you were in college? And so what was some, you have any memories around that, any challenges that you had like with us that you had to figure out kind of on your own without any help?
I had no challenges, per se. By being the only child coming up down south in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, I basically raised my siblings. And the thing that I wanted to instill within you guys was that there's a book called The Point Man that says that God has given the man the head of the house. He's the head of the house, and he has everything points back to the man of the house. So my thing is that once I had my own family, I was going to make sure that not knowing that the Lord was going to give me boys, and to be honest with you, we were looking for girls, but the Lord knows we're looking for one girl and one boy. But the Lord knows, the Lord knew what I needed. He knew I needed boys to raise to be men, and so that was my goal. That was my focus, was to teach you guys how to be a man, how to respect. I would respect your mom and the ladies in the house, and I told you and Jeremiah both, like when you guys went away to school, and if you remember this, I told you, I said, now you don't have to call me, but you make sure that you call and check on your mom regularly. Mm-hmm. And if I ever find out that you do anything that's going to be contrary to that, we brought you here and I'll take you out. So you had to respect your mom. So you guys did that. You did that. So that was one of the things that I wanted to instill within you.
Yeah, so I figured that the girl. So right now, I want everyone to know that you'll probably be seeing my daughters at some point. They're supposed to be upstairs, but this is COVID-19. Oh, that's my little one, Emerson. And so I guess she's gonna be in the video along with everyone else. Hey babe, close the door. Close the door. All right, so I guess we're going to do this interview with all the kids. I want to kind of take a different direction and kind of go towards a reflection and viewing as a parent.
Hi, Annie.
We're live, babe. We're live.
I know.
Okay. All right. Can you please go sit? It's funny. So I don't know if y'all remember Mom and Dad, but like we had a biopic that we were doing earlier this year, and unfortunately, it was the day that Kobe Bryant was. We discovered that he had a helicopter accident and passed away. But the same situation happened today, and Emerson, you're in the same spot that you were in earlier of 2020 as you are now. But again, this is, like I said, we're going to give it to you authentic and raw. So you're going to see how it is in the Quarles house. So I want to kind of take a transition and start and reflect from a parenting standpoint. I guess one of the things that I would say, Dad, you particularly, one of the things I've always respected about you is that you've always been a humble person. You come from very humble beginnings, but you work for everything you had. What I learned about work ethic and taking pride in what you do, I learned a lot of that stuff from you, from Mom also, but for Dad, in a sense where you didn't have a lot of role models. You were your own role model. You had to pay your way through college with 3 or 4 jobs before you can actually get through. And you always have been a man about it. You never complained about it. And I respect that, because to me, those are the values and virtues that you taught me as a man. So you did a lot of things well. And one of the things you always taught me, Dad, was you always said, Jonathan, I want you to grow up and be your own boss. Right? I want you to be your own boss. And one of the things I realized about you is that you gave us the vision, but sometimes, because I know you tried the entrepreneurship route, sometimes it didn't quite always go towards the way that you wanted to go. And so you didn't quite have the tools. And so, I've never asked you this question, but this is the first time I asked you the question. I remember at a very young age, you were in the Herbalife.
Right.
Herbalife. And you had an office space close to where we live. And then I remember something happened. I don't know if someone broke into the building, but like, talk to me about that story, and then tell me about the lessons learned, and then why after the situation happened, I felt like you then made a pivot and went back to working after that and not pursuing your entrepreneurship. But like, talk to me about what was the challenge, and then like, what was the lessons learned?
I've always believed in, I always try to teach you guys that you want to have your own business. And that comes from coming up in the South. My father had a grocery store in the South, and my uncle had a cleaning company. My other uncle was a barber. And so the family, my father's side of the family, always owned their own. They always had their own businesses. So being an entrepreneur is always been in my blood. And I wanted to instill that within you and Jeremiah, that you want to have your own. In other words, you want to write your own paycheck. You want to be your own boss. So that I kept saying that over and over again to you guys as you was growing up, because of the fact I knew that owning your own was better than work for someone. So I've always believed in, you talk about Herbalife, I've always believed in multi-marketing. I was in Herbalife. I was in several other venues that dealt with multi-level marketing. And Herbalife failed. Some of the other businesses failed. But my thing was, I learned from failure. I'm learning from failure. So I think it was someone said that if you can look up, you can always get up. So I went from one venue to another.
Les Brown.
You can look up, you can always get up. So I learned from failures. I learned from different venues that I was involved with.
Right.
So even though I had a traditional job, I still believed in having an ownership and doing some things differently than what I was doing before.
Okay. All right. I see my mom's face, so I know it's you know, it's
Yeah.
somebody about to get in trouble down there. Emerson. So Mom, the question I have for you is so one of the things that how I describe you, Mom, is that you are always loving. You are all about health and wellness. And so in the midst of this kid, I don't know if you would agree with this, but like I was always a kid that was very curious, where the world called me a rebel. I always loved challenging authority. And I would often get in trouble in school and things like that. But my mom would never claim like he's bad or anything like that. He's just, but I was always a curious kid. I would question teachers when I didn't understand things. And if they didn't actually, answer the question properly, I would continue to ask and things like that. So how in the midst of having, because when you think about me and Jeremiah was really like the golden child. Jeremiah was, he never got in trouble with school. Jeremiah was always studious. He was never the one that was jumping off the roof, getting injured, going to the hospital. That was always me. How do you balance? How do you love someone unconditionally, particularly your son, that is challenging authority, that is being disobedient? That usually was whenever me and Jeremiah were fighting, I was the one always starting the fights, and I was the littlest one in the family. I was the youngest, right? How do you show unconditional love in the midst of those things?
Well, first of all, you guys were gifts from God. Okay. So I was responsible for whatever went your way. Now, that word rebel that you just mentioned, I don't like claiming derogatory type words about children. I'll tell folk in a minute, don't call them bad now. Don't call them bad. I said, because when you keep saying they're bad, they'll wind up acting very, very bad. But, but you know what? You just have to continue to love and to discipline, those two, I think, are the major things as parents. You've got to let them know they need to have the discipline because you do love them, and then just steer them in the direction that they do need to go, Leave her alone, baby. Leave her alone. So I think those attributes, I think, would basically be what is needed, even in children today. You can't allow children to continue to do things that is disrupted, as far as like in school, at church, any of those types of venues, and still give them the insight to let them know that people are watching you, and those same people might wind up coming across your path when you get to be a teenager as well as an adult. So, those are things that you do have to wind up watching for. Yes.
Okay. So obviously, the world can see that I have very active kids. They don't come too far from, the tree in which they were, where they come from. So, and they're active and things like that. So, welcome to our life. But I guess I'm really curious also to know, how were you before Jeremiah was born, before I was born? Like, how were you as individuals before you actually started having kids? Like, talk to me about that.
I guess I could say, we wanted to really know one another and kind of know where we wanted to go in life as a couple. And I think you do need to wind up having a little bit of time before you really start bringing families in to the equation. And So we had an opportunity to really have fun. Not saying that we weren't having fun after you guys came, but have fun, really know one another, you know, and it's just being a part of one another's lives. And then when those families come, you know, you're prepared for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, ask the question again.
How were you before you were a parent? Like
Before I was a parent, I was the same as I am now. I was the type of person that was like you said, I'm very humble, and I was very focused on what I had to do and what need to do, what had to be done. And the Lord blessed me with your mom over 45 years ago. And from that point on, we are where we are now because of our relationship. So I've always been the type of person that was focused on doing things and to make sure things were done decently in order. And when you guys came along, then we started to make sure that things were done the way that the Lord wanted it to be done in the right way.
So I guess you bring up a good point. And this is what I talk about in the book, you know, the importance of like controlling your circle and the relationships that you have. And that even goes towards partnerships, marriage, relationships, and things like that. You know, what were some of the principles and values that you all, because I mean, you guys have been married how many years now?
43 years.
Yes, 43.
43 years. And what I can honestly say about you all were the standard, like growing up. I mean, and so we're gonna get into that next. But like, what are some of the principles and values that you all value? Because I know that you all are best friends. I know growing up, Dad, you didn't have like guys that you used to hang out with. Mom, you didn't either. I mean, you Mom and Dad, you to this day are still best friends. And I think I really admire that about you all. And I think it says it's a testimony to you know, to one, the guidance that you all have had and from your spiritual walk, as well as just you all just really taking the time. So I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the things that is important as it relates to, you know, building this bond for 43 years? That's a long time. But what are some of the things that you say you would think that would like played a big part in that?
The biggest thing that for 43 years that enhanced our life, and I'm still going back to what we said before, our life has always been focused on Jesus Christ, and He's always been a center of our life for 43 years plus. So by being focused on Him, He took us through some things that we couldn't have gone through without Him. Mm-hmm. He took us through some things that we couldn't have gone through raising two boys, and it's by His grace that we've been together for 43 years. Exactly. So it's been a blessing to us. So that's the main focus. The main focus for us is that it was Jesus Christ, and to God be the glory.
And you know, I'd like to add on to that. People that might be listening to this, there's been ups, there's been downs. It hasn't always been good, and it hasn't always been bad. But you know, when you can wind up working through, and when I say working through, I mean praying about it, not having that selfish disposition that I'm right all the time. You know, we thank God that we had that kind of communication to let each other know, okay, well, I was wrong, and I apologize. And then go on about your business, but don't be holding on to anything, you know. And I think people have a tendency to hold on to stuff instead of letting go and praying about it. You know, I think that is something that a lot of married couples really do need to understand. First of all, get God in your life. It is so very, very important. You know, if you don't know Him, just ask somebody and they'll tell you. You know, my mom used to always say, if you don't know, ask.
So you bring up a good point. I think that's a good pivot as to where I was actually going after this. one of the things that I admired the most about you all, and again, this is as we think about the game changers, entrepreneurs, and people that are like innovating and doing some amazing things. I think it's so important to understand the importance of communication, conflict resolution, right? So one thing as it relates to conflict resolution, growing up, I've never seen the two of you argue. I've never seen the two of you argue. And so growing up, I thought that was a good thing. But as I've gotten older and I started getting in relationships, I didn't know how to resolve issues because I saw my mom and my dad, which was the perfect couple, in my opinion, right? The perfect marriage that never fought, never had a disagreement. So the problem with that was, as I got older, I never knew how to resolve issues, whether it was in relationships or whether it was even with business relationships. And so, I don't know if that was intentional. That's the first question I have. Was that intentional for you all not to show the dissension between the two of you in front of me and my brother? That's the first question. The second question is looking back and seeing the importance of resolution. For me, I didn't know how to resolve an issue because whenever I had an issue, I would just walk away from it or run away from it because I'm like, obviously this person is crazy. This person, like, that's not how you're supposed to do it, because my mom and dad never would do it like that. But I realized after years of growing up is that I had to figure out how to resolve issues, even if it was contentious and even if it was a disagreement where I just totally disagree with. But were you intentional about that? And then two, do you think that if you looking back in retrospect, do you think that was a wise thing to do?
Jonathan, I got to thinking about that. I think when an issue came up, first of all, your argument is not your child's argument. So they don't need to be a part of it. You need to know how to handle disagreements. I'll call them disagreements. And handle it in your own secret way. Your children don't need to have it because, a lot of times that do disturb the children, And then, like you were saying, you had kind of an awkward way of, making a resolution of basically someone that would just kind of go off or what have you. And like you say, you weren't quite sure where they was coming from and said, oh, I need to get away from this person. I got to thinking about that. And I mentioned that to your dad. And I says, you know what? I think maybe I've kind of did him an injustice, because he really didn't understand once he got out there on his own that people do disagree, Everyone does not agree with you. And it's a problem when they do. But, I just said, I just wondered, did we really kind of, make it kind of a strange situation on these boys because they never really seen that in the home, not that it was a perfect home, but they never heard any kind of disagreement. He was always a gentleman to me, and so that was never a question in the home. But a lot of homes are not like that. So yeah, it might have been somewhat an unjust for you because you didn't really know how to, handle it. Yeah.
We had disagreements over the 43 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it was one thing that we always said. When we started off with our marriage, we always said that we will always be one. So you could never come to your mom and ask her something and not come to me. And she would always say, did you talk with your dad? And vice versa. So we was always one. You would never hear us argue, and we had some arguments, but you never heard that. You never heard disagreements, because that brings about problems later on in life. So we always handle the situation between ourselves, but you guys never heard that.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. And I think that, in retrospect and kind of like, as an adult now and having, kids of my own and things like that, I think one of the things that's so important for kids and for people, I think just human beings to really understand is that nothing in the world is perfect, and the communication is key, in particular proactive communication.
Right.
And so that's something that, as we think about how do you, in the book I talk a lot about all of the different things from spiritual to mental, because to become a game changer, you can't just like have skill sets and you think you can change the world. Like, the reality is real situations happen. Game changers, entrepreneurs, business owners, they have families. And so you can't be an amazing business person and not be able to not be a holistic, be whole as an individual. So I think conflict resolution is one of the things that, at least for me, I learned, through several different situations. And I think, being able to like show and be able to communicate. So the children, as well as the people, can actually see conflict, but then also see that they actually will come there to resolution. Because if there's no resolution, I just feel like it's unproductive. That's something that I just wanted to ask you all, because we never had that conversation. And again, the this is to have a candid conversation about things that most parents and children don't really talk about. So I thank y'all for that, for your honesty. We're gonna switch over just a little bit. Okay.
Before you go any further, going back to what you said, coming up as a child, that was one of the things that I remember coming up, that I never would ask a question about why my grandmother or my mother say so. I didn't have a father in the house, so all I had was my grandmother and my mother. So that led me to do some things differently than what I was brought up in when it came to my family.
Okay. And I think almost in line with kind of partnership, I say this all the time, that, this road of entrepreneurship is a lonely road. Because if you're not an entrepreneur, you have no idea the kind of struggles, the kind of stress that you have to deal with. And your partner or your friends may not even understand if that's not the road they travel. And so a lot of times it's lonely. It's lonely, and you just hope that someone can actually understand you. There's a situation that happened, I remember growing up, where Dad, you were working at Green's Funeral Home, and I talk about this in the book also. You've always had an impeccable work ethic. Like, you were the first person in the office, last one to leave, the hardest worker always. That's all I've known about you. But I remember there was a time in high school where you were working at Green's Funeral Home, and it was rough times. And I remember years that you were not even bringing a paycheck home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, Mom had to step up, and Mom had, first of all, we never ever talked about money in the house. So I never knew that I didn't know how, humble we were from a means standpoint, until I got older. But I like to see how, Mom, you stepped up. You didn't complain. You didn't say anything bad about Dad. Like, you did what you needed to do. And that's, to me, it speaks to the strength of a woman. And we talked about that the other day with our brotherhood talk about, you look at a man and how, if you look at the success of a man, normally it's a woman next to him. And so I credit you, Mom, a lot for holding down the house the time that Dad, in principle, continued to work and didn't bring home a check, because other people, you wanted to make sure that other people didn't get laid off. And so you were willing to not take a paycheck, and your family, and it affected your family, while other people, you had single mothers that needed their jobs and needed their paycheck. That showed me a lot about you. That is a very admirable thing. And this is like, when I tell people how much like I adore you, Dad, this is the kind of stuff that, like, as a man now, like, I don't even know if I could do something like that. If I had to decide between my kids and then someone else, I mean, it would be really hard. But you had a strong woman. And so, Mom, like, talk to me about how that was, and how important you thought as a woman it was to be a support system in the midst of your husband not bringing a paycheck home. This was like for more than 1 year. But we never complained about it. You guys didn't argue about it. We never even knew that was happening. So, like, talk to me about that. Like, what was your thought process behind that?
Well, what I can start from probably where I've even started with the other questions. First of all, when you pray for someone and you wait, and then you get that person that you prayed for, and then when he unite you in one as one, two becomes one. And when you take those vowels, it don't say good, 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 and good. It says for good, for bad, for sickness, for health. It says all of those things. You know, people need to wind up redoing their vowels basically to let them understand that it means more than just I'm married to you. So when there's ups, when there's downs, we're still together.
Okay.
That settles it.
And that was one of your mom's strong points. You know, we were one, and we came together as one, and we ended up going through things together as one. So
exactly.
There was nothing that was too hard for us. There was nothing that we figured that we couldn't get through. And it goes back to it's all about the grace of God.
There you go. Amen. Mm-hmm.
So all right, so again, as I always say before, like you guys have really taught a lot of values and principles in growing up, and the man that I am today is because of you all, and I'm so appreciative of that. I'm gonna be a little challenging in this respective. Growing up, you guys always taught us to be independent thinkers. You always taught us to be independent thinkers, right? And on one instance, you taught us that, and you would say that to us. On another instance, you were like, "Don't question my authority." You would tell us, "I said so." And for me, I was the one I was asking questions. Well, why? Like, why do I have to do that? Because I said so. And so I never understood that, because on one instance, it's like, tell me you want me to be an independent person, and I'm trying to do that, but at the same time, it's like, you don't have no choice. You going to church every Sunday. You're gonna wear what I tell you to wear. And I'm just like, well, but like it was a contradictory to me. And so, like, I'm looking, and that's the thing, that as a parent now, and I have kids, and I struggle with that at times, because on one instance, I want my kids to I would like for them to be independent thinkers. I would like for them to have an analysis. I want them to have exposure and experience. That's why, they've been to probably more countries than I know I've been to before I was even in college. My kids are exposed to things that I never, ever had an opportunity to, for a lot of different reasons. But even to the point where, we don't adhere to a particular spirituality for them. They understand that there's a God and things like that, but my kids have worship and have experienced all different cultures, all different religions. And for me, I want them to be able to experience that on themselves and figure out what works for them. And I know that's different from you all, because you all are very stern and very, very strict. You all are Christians, and it's no disrespect to that. But at the same time, how do you all reconcile one instance where you say that you wanted us to be independent thinkers and independent people, but yet we were to do what you say and no questions asked? How do you reconcile that?
That was a thing, Jonathan, that I was brought up under, that says when I tell you something, then you do it. It was an authority piece, and you didn't question what I tell you. And keep it in mind that I never would tell you anything that's going to hurt you. Where you're trying to go, I've been there. Your mom has been there. So when we said something, we didn't like for you to question it. Just do it. Go ahead and do what we told you to do. And that was one of the things that was instilled within me.
Do you think
coming up as a kid?
But do you think that's a contradiction, though? Because you say you don't want to do anything that hurts me, but how do you know it doesn't hurt me if you don't allow me to actually go out? And like you always say, some people see the light and some people feel the heat. So how am I supposed to see the light and feel the heat when you basically telling me you don't have an opportunity to figure that out on your own? But when you get older, you're supposed to do that. So how is that not a contradiction?
It's a contradiction, and that's one of the things that over the years that I've learned. That, like I said, that was the way I was brought up. over the years, I've learned that is a contradiction, that you have to think for yourself. So, and that's what hopefully that's what you're doing with your children. But that was one of the things that I was raised with.
Sure.
And and I do understand where you're coming from, as far as because we basically were, pretty much raised the same way. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like I tell folk, I say, they say, "Oh, that's old fashioned," and I'll tell them, I says, "But breathing is old fashioned, and who don't want to continue to breathe? Okay, unless you want to either see heaven or hell, But I know that as I've gotten older, that I do need to listen more and observe a little bit more, because of the fact that so many things have kind of gotten out of place on how they used to be as a structure, a family structure. And so I need to kind of know where I'm going and how to wind up focusing to deal with that type of thing. So yes, it's taken me somewhat out of my comfort zone, because like I say, when I tell you something, don't ask me why I said that, But then I understand now, because I do hear that even from these grandbabies, and I tell them, I say, now, you're not old enough to really wind up asking that question. I say, but you know what? Granny is going to wind up telling you exactly why she said it. First of all, because I love you. And, I can continue to just let you do what you want to do. But then once you get up to your dad's age and you get out there, somebody's going to knock you in the head because you don't listen, And so, those types of things. And, something just so simple, people fail to realize this, everyone need to have that spiritual life. They really do need to have that. And that's instilling them as they go from the baby on up to adulthood. And then, like you say, the Bible speaks of that, that you might kind of waver, but you still know the foundation. See, that's the key, the foundation. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, I mean, and I totally agree. I think the foundation is so important. And that's, I think we have like 10 minutes left, and I want to open up to any questions that the community may have. But before we do that, I mean, if you have a question, please send a note in the chat and it'll get to us. But I just want to remind people that the book is available, Making Dollars by Making Change. I know Mom and Dad, you guys got your copy. Actually, I think you might have been the first one to buy. But yeah, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, we are, right now, we're #1 new release book in about 6 or 7 categories. So thank you so much for all the folks that support it. The goal is to be able to get this book. Let me be very clear. The book has nothing to do with me. This book is one for people that understand and believe in the ideas that you can actually do. You can actually have purpose, that your purpose can drive your passion, and you don't have to like lead with profit. And so, we want to make sure that Making Dollars or Making Change get to everyone, over 1 million hands globally. And in the midst of that, I think there's a couple of things that, I think you guys asked me a question earlier, was like, so Dad, I don't know if you had a chance to finish the book yet, but one of the questions was, you did? Okay. So one of the questions you asked me were just like, you really enjoyed the ending, the letter to the younger JQ. And I think if I were to summarize the ending of the younger JQ, this was a letter that I wrote. It's funny because that wasn't even a part of the original manuscript, but after looking at the proof, I took a look and was like, there's something missing. Because one thing I want people to know, and I think Tavis Smiley did a good job of like identifying this, is that I'm not a perfect person, nor do I ever proclaim to be. Most people that know me, my real friends, know that I accept my flaws. I don't ever try to be a perfect person. And the reality is, I think that's what people are looking for. People are looking for truth. People are looking for authenticity. And they're not looking for people that's trying to be that are, or at least perceived to be perfect. Because there's only one, there's no human being that's perfect. Right. And one of the things, I made a lot of mistakes. And then in this letter, I talk about some of the things that I did in my 20s that, I would wish that I would have done better. I have no regrets. But there's 3 things that we'll probably add to that letter. And that's one, I think the baseline for everything as it relates to entrepreneurship, business, or organization, social justice work that you're doing, one is people look for people with high IQ, right? That's kind of a baseline. But I think that's, most people think that's where it stops. So it's not enough just to get a degree, to go and to learn how to memorize things in school. And, I mean, no disrespect to school, but I think that's one thing. I think as we're looking at, if you were to ask me what kind of advice I want to give to people that want to be game changers, that are still figuring out, like, do they want to go into entrepreneurship and things like that? There's these three things. There's one, you got to have IQ, a baseline of IQ. The second thing is your EQ. So emotional quotient. Like, it's so important for you to understand human behavior. And for me, that's been a lot of my successes. I've never really been the smartest person in the room. I've never really, I just haven't. But one thing I can do better than most people is really read the room, really understand and empathize and sympathize with human beings, and being able to figure out what the goal that people are trying to reach and help them to reach the goal. And that has a lot to do with your EQ. The last part is your AQ, your adaptability quotient. And that's something that people are just starting to talk about now. But the ability, as I talk about, we have to be more global minded as it relates to global, to be a game changer. You have to be globally minded. You have to be able to build locally, but think globally, because this world is global. And so I tell my kids that all the time. That's why they don't travel just because for vacation. They travel so they can learn culture, economics. They're learning multiple languages right now. And that's what I try to tell a lot of young people who have kids or children. That's going to be the game changer. Like, doing things in the United States, you're no longer going to be employable. If you don't have a skill set that goes beyond these borders, no one's going to hire you. And so that's something that you have to think about. But to be able to be adaptable, the only way you can be adaptable is to be able to be sensitive and accepting of all cultures, right? And understand the importance of diversity. And so how you do that is through travel. How you do that is through, exposure and experiences of uncomfortable environments, and being able to sit in and to learn and to be present. So those three things I think I would add to that letter. I was going to read an excerpt of the letter, but I think we're running out of time. Let me see if there's any questions. Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions here. Well, wait, there is. Let's see. What is one thing your parents learned from the book about you as a person and an entrepreneur that they didn't know before? That's a question for you all. Well, Dad, you don't know so far. So
what I've learned from the book, Jonathan, is that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you have done and what you're doing, and your focus seems to be on helping other people. Reading the book, going through the book, and reading what you've done and what you plan on doing, really makes me feel good that it's not about you. It's about helping other people and showing other people that there's another way of doing things. And the other piece that I like about the book is that you focus a lot on the family. The family is important. Without the family, you can't do anything. The family is the key to your success as an entrepreneur. So those are the things that I pull from the book, and the character and the integrity that you had throughout the book and throughout your life. And one thing that I really appreciate from you, you have 3 girls, and I'm proud of you for the way that you have become not only a man, but you become a father, and you take care of your girls, and I like the way that you do it, and that goes throughout the book, how you have that loving spirit for not only people but for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, my Aunt Rhonda just asked a question. Ask your dad if he believes that your mother being such a biblical wife was actually a foundation of the strength of their marriage.
Definitely. That was the Lord put your mom and I together over 43 years ago, and I know it was the Lord because we've gone through some things, and we've had some ups and downs, but through it all, through it all, I know that the Lord sent her to me. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, I'm very clear of that, and
I wouldn't be where you are if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm very clear of that because the two of you all were married prior to getting married, so you guys had situations outside, and so I'm grateful that the two of you all found each other because I couldn't imagine having any other parents. I think you all are the perfect parents for me. And again, in the midst of all of my my curiosity as a young kid, you all have always been genuinely loving and never judged me, never treated me any differently. Because you could have easily done that. I mean, Jeremiah said Jeremiah was the perfect kid. You could have easily said Jeremiah is the good kid and Jonathan was like the bad apple, but you always treated us equal, and I'm greatly appreciative of that.
Jeremiah has a personality, and you have a personality.
And they're totally
totally different. And we understand that. We understood that.
All right. So there's a question for you, Dad, from AJ. What's up, AJ? What do you recommend doing with multi-level marketing, such as Legal Shield, Herbalife now? Will you still recommend the multi-level marketing today?
I definitely encourage multi-level marketing. There's a learning process in that. And we went through several multi-level. The thing that I found out about multi-level marketing, we could never find anyone that had the same commitment or the same loyalty that we had. And we went through, we did extremely well in a lot of those we did, the Lord blessed us, but we never could find people with like minds that we had. Multi-level marketing is a tool that will help you to get from point A to point B. But the problem we ran into was trying to find people like us that wanted to journey with us as well. And I still believe in it. I still believe in multi-level.
And I'll say that, and I'll say, in just all transparency, you all have been totally committed, and I think you probably have been a part of every multi-level marketing since its existence. My business model is a lot different, and we always disagreed on that. I know you guys wanted me to be involved in the business, but for me, I had different kind of business principles, and multi-level didn't work for me. So, but it was something that you all enjoy. But there's several ways, and there's a lot of different ways that you can, as it relates to business, and we talk about that. So there's no knock towards that. So
it wasn't so much. It wasn't so much the money side of it. It still goes back to the learning experience that I learned from it. I learned from each one. So that was a piece that I learned from each one of the markets.
Okay. So my good friend Angel, hey Angel, she's a friend, but she's somebody who I really look up to. She asked the question, what kind of changes would Bill and Ruthy like to see in the world as their grandbabies become adults?
I would like to see them to, I would like to have them to, first of all, recognize that they can do anything that they want to do if they set their mind to it. I would also recommend that they surround themselves with positive people. That was one of the things that I learned, growing. Well, I learned through the businesses. You want to get away from negativity. You want to be around people that have a like mind like you do. Stay away from negative vibes, a positive vibe. I want to see them to become strong Black women and to amplify the Quarles name.
No question.
The amplify the Quarles name and to realize that
we didn't talk.
Realize that,
go ahead. We never talked about that. That's one of the things you always instilled into us is the Quarles name. Like we actually took ownership in that. And a person who I really admire, there's two people that and hopefully they're listening or somebody that knows and listen. Dame Dash and Master P are two people that I want to collaborate and work with. I do believe in when you speak it in the universe, it comes into reality. So I've been speaking it. I do have a connection to Dame Dash, and we're supposed to be setting some up real soon. But anybody that knows Master P, I want to connect with Master P because their values and interests that they actually rely on, it's very aligned with who I am as a person. but it's this idea of the better we can do in business, the more we can do in our community. It's not, and it's not, and it starts like that. So we want to be successful. We want to own like our own and everything. But one of the things you talk about, Dame Dash talk about is, he works hard for his last name, not his first. And so for me, the work that I do now, as it relates to entrepreneurship and the investments that I've actually been involved in, has nothing to do with me. I may not even really realize the real benefits from it, but that's not the goal. The goal for me is at least my grandkids could be able to see that their grandfather did something to set them up and make sacrifices when it wasn't popular, that actually reinvested when I actually made money instead of going and buy a new car and, the materialistic things that actually depreciated opposed to appreciate. That's what I want my kids to know. My daughters are learning that now. All of my daughters understand what this world that we're living in. They also understand the sense of themselves, understand that they are a Quarles, and being a Quarles is a certain level of like excellence that we serve and we work and walk in. And so with that being said, there's a greater responsibility that they have, just as you taught us growing up. I don't know if there's any more questions, but hi, Emerson. Sweet thing right there. Emerson is going to be a mogul. I'm speaking that to the universe. She know it. She's trying to act shy now. But yeah, so I think as we get ready to close, because we're now an hour, I want to thank everybody that joined. I would also encourage you all to make sure you go out and buy Making Dollars While Making Change on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Everything that we do, and in the book I talk about this, every business that I'm associated with, it all has a double, triple bottom line focus. So it's not just about making money, because money is not my master. Money is just a tool. And what I've realized is that I have a mission, and my mission, money has never and ever been my mission, but money is something that funds my mission. And I think that's something that people have to really understand. The reason why I want to be successful in the businesses that I'm doing right now is that I want to be able to fund. I don't want to have to ask the government for help. I don't want to have to ask for anyone to help my community or my family besides myself. And so that's what we're working towards. And that's what Making Dollars While Making Change is about. It's about putting people first and profit second. Because profit, obviously, if you're not bringing any kind of like commerce in, there's no way that you can actually empower your people. And so that's what we're doing. And that's what the book talks about. And we're happy to continue to share that message. There's a lot of people that's doing some amazing things, and we're living in a world now. And I mean, for y'all, everybody that have seen what's going on in the world, at the U.S. Capitol, all of the things, it's now more than ever so important for us to have our stuff together. It's now important for us to now understand collective economics, collective politics, be organized. And the book talks about a lot of that stuff. And so, I hope you all can join me in this journey as we continue to impact the world while still being self-sufficient with self-determination. So thank you all for joining. And this was fun. I love y'all, Mom and Dad. Thank you for joining this segment. This is actually the last segment until we're actually doing something Monday, a coalition building with we're going to be featuring our Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist, my good friend. So that will be our last episode. Thank you so much, everyone who joined all of the streams in the past. We have some more things coming out in February. We have a whole new launch that we're going to be doing as it relates to Quartz water source. So stay tuned to that. If you want to support the water source, we have some amazing things that we're going to be doing. But at the end of the day, we work together. We can do a lot of amazing things together. And I just want to thank my parents for providing with that foundation and those principles and values that I live by. And I think, the world is going to be a better place because of that. So thank y'all, and I love y'all.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Man. All right. So with that, peace out.